Y'all remember when Twilight went back in time to warn herself not to worry, which caused her to worry in the first place? Which resulted in her going back in time and warning herself not to worry, which caused her to worry in the first place? Make it make sense. Challenge accepted. Future Sawtooth here, filling in for past Sawtooth, who doesn't know the answer to this problem, so I'm gonna teach them, and you if you'll stick around for it. So how did Twilight know there was a time travel spell in the Starswirl the Bearded wing of the Canterlot archives? Well, future Twilight told her. And how did future Twilight know? Well, when she was past Twilight, future Twilight told her. So she went on to tell her past self, who went on to tell her past self, so on and so forth. But where did this information originally come from? Seemingly nowhere. We're used to events causing other events, but this event caused itself. This is what's known as the bootstrap paradox. Imagine trying to pull yourself up by your boots. You can't, because you're in them. That's what this is, an impossible situation. Those just don't happen, unless Discord is involved, but he was in stone at the time, so there must be more going on here than meets the eye. In order to figure this out, let's do something a little different and jump universes, because another time traveler has been in a very similar situation. The TARDIS is the Doctor's time machine. It's basically a phone box that's bigger on the inside and can materialize anywhere in space and time, which happen to be the names of the shorts I'll be referring to. I highly recommend watching them first. Check out the playlist here or in the description, but if not, I'll explain what happened. Here's your spoiler warning. Spoiler alert! So the TARDIS materialized inside itself. Not supposed to happen. So when you go through one door, you come out the other. Weird, right? But to make things even weirder, the TARDIS exterior drifted forward in time, so that anyone who went through this door came out the other door, but slightly in the past. So instead of like this, it looked like this. Here's where the paradox comes in. The entire TARDIS was about to blow if the Doctor didn't pull the right lever. Problem was, he didn't know which lever. So how did he get out of this situation? Ready for this? The future Doctor came through the door declaring the right lever, so past Doctor pulled that lever and went through the other door, becoming the future Doctor that declared the right lever. I know, my head is spinning too, but here we have a similar situation. Future Doctor knew which lever to pull because when he was past Doctor, future Doctor told him which lever to pull, but the knowledge itself came from nowhere. Or did it? I suspect there's more to the story, that buried beneath this perfect loop lie multiple previous iterations of this moment that led to the perfect loop. Time travel scenarios like this may settle into nice loops, but that doesn't mean they started out that way. Here's what I mean. I think there was an original iteration of this moment in which no future Doctor came through that door. All the Doctor could do was guess, so he pulls a lever at random. Wrong lever. But before the TARDIS explodes, he goes through the door into the past and tells his past self which lever not to pull. Past Doctor pulls a different lever, also wrong. But before the TARDIS explodes, he goes through the door and tells his past self which levers not to pull. Past Doctor pulls another lever, this time getting it right. So he goes through the door and confidently declares the correct lever, officially starting the loop we know. The knowledge of which lever to pull didn't come out of the void, it arose from the process of elimination across multiple iterations of the same moment. The information came from the hidden timelines beneath the loop that caused the loop. Now, let's take this idea and apply it to Twilight's situation. Sure, Twilight's only motivation to go back in time was to keep her past self from worrying, but beneath this loop may also tell a different story. There may have been an actual disaster that prompted Twilight to use time travel in the first place. I mean, think of how much was fixed due to Twilight's worrying. Ponyville's bridge was cracking, their dam was leaking, and that's just locally. Twilight had her friends disaster-proof all of Equestria. If it weren't for that vague warning from future Twilight, something terrible might have actually gone down, and it may have been enough to push Twilight to desperate measures. Though let's be honest, this is pre-Alicorn Twilight we're talking about here, it wouldn't even take that much. So here's how I think it may have happened. In that original timeline where Twilight never receives a warning from her future self, there is no disaster proofing and something goes wrong. This sends Twilight into a tailspin. Maybe she's afraid Celestia will kick her from her studies or something. So in a fit of desperation, she rushes to the Canterlot archives, discovers for herself that there's a time travel spell in the Star Swirl wing, and casts it. Pause. It's important to note that this Twilight wouldn't have looked like the future Twilight we know. She may have had the funky suit, but she wouldn't have had the crazy mane, bandage, or eye patch, because those she only got by trying to avoid disaster, which this Twilight had no reason to do. You know what she may still have had though? The scar. The one she got from Celestia's lost dog poster. This is because, as far as we can tell, Cerberus would have escaped with or without warning or disaster proofing. Besides the scar, this Twilight may have shown some wear from whatever the actual disaster was, as well as wear from returning Cerberus. This is the Twilight that first went back in time, the one that started this whole mess. So she arrives in the past, but of course with past Twilight's overwhelming curiosity, she can't fit a word in edgewise. This leaves past Twilight with no idea what the coming disaster is. She does everything she can to disaster-proof Equestria, but after returning Cerberus and getting the scar she saw on future Twilight, she worries the disaster is still yet to come. In reality, she already prevented it, but she goes on to try different methods of preventing the disaster anyway, slowly becoming the future Twilight we know for the first time. The only difference between this iteration and the one we all know is that this Twilight doesn't recognize these signs, since the first Twilight to time travel didn't have them. Even still, the end result is the same. She still fears that the disaster can't be prevented and that the only solution is to stop time. This sends her to the Star Swirl wing that future Twilight mentioned. She looks for a time-stopping spell to no avail, and finally, when disaster never strikes, she figures there is nothing to worry about and goes back in time to tell herself just that. But of course, with past Twilight's overwhelming curiosity, she can't fit a word in edgewise, and the loop we know has officially begun. The paradox wasn't a paradox at all. There was originally a disaster worth time traveling over, but in perfect Twilight fashion, her overreaction took the focus and became the subject of the time loop. Even if I'm not 100% on the details, the main idea is the same. What seems logically impossible on the surface may just be the result of a deeper, unseen process. Did you get all that? I think so. Good, because now it's your turn to explain. What? To who? To you, of course, once you go back in time and become me. Here's a copy of the spell. Wait, do I have to remember everything you just said? It just sort of happens. And how do you know I'll even be able to cast this? Because I was able to when I was you. I guess that makes sense. Okay, what's my first line? Challenge accepted. Gotcha. Sawtooth, you have got to stop talking to yourself. Starting now, whether it's my clone, my alternate timeline self, or my past or future self, perhaps I shouldn't be making a habit of this. But what do you think of those ideas? Is there more to the time loop than just what we saw? Was there an actual disaster? If you think all this is wrong, don't look at me, I'm just repeating what I heard myself say. I'm guessing some iteration of me came up with this and told it to their past self so they wouldn't have to come up with it themselves? Regardless, leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If you want to support this channel financially, check out my perks at patreon.com/sawtoothwaves. And thank you so much to everyone who already has, especially my Alicorn tier patrons. Equinox3141, Petrolhead02, Gilded Page, Cyanax, Princess Starglow, Allison H, Grim Eclipse, and the winner of this week's Alicorn raffle, the Nameless One. Congrats, and thanks again for everyone's support. Y'all help make this channel possible. I'm Sawtooth Waves, signing out until Friday after next. Brohoof.